Tell me, when was the last time you travelled with a group of people? How did that go? Were there many run-ins amongst you while you were travelling? Did you all get along really well and have an amazing time? Were there certain parts of your trip that weren't as good as others because there were disagreements with different people over decisions that were being made? What does travel with other people look like? And how much discussion did you have before you left for your trip? I'm Kate Mason, and welcome to Parenting and Personalities. This is the podcast that connects you to the ones you care about the most. Today I'm going to be talking about travelling as a group, whether it's friends or family, and how to keep the peace in the melting pot of different personalities and understanding each person's communication style. I've just returned from a family trip with my wonderful family and their partners to the USA and Canada. We had a fantastic time, but naturally travelling with people isn't without its dilemmas, frustration and stresses, as well as the other great times that came along with it. Now, what I want to discuss today is how can we prepare ourselves for travel and the trip with 6 different personality types. So where do you start with getting to know each other and understanding what each person would prefer out of a trip with a group of 6? Well, here's how we started. At the very beginning of our planning, we all sat around and we talked about what we wanted out of the trip, where we'd like to go, the way we'd like to get to those places, and what kind of things people wanted to see at each destination. Now, I must admit, I did have a hidden agenda and a bit of control over our destinations because my intent was to visit as many places in the US and Canada that I thought would give a different perspective to the travellers who hadn't travelled to the States as much. Talk about taking control, let's talk about our group of travellers. Having knowledge about our personalities and temperaments really helped. Now, please remember, as I talk about personalities and temperaments, we're all unique. And our innate personalities are also moulded by our life experiences of family, friends, religion, birth order, country of birth, and many more factors. However, our personalities still have a huge impact on how we view and act in our world. So let me give you a quick rundown of our personality types and temperaments and see if you can relate to any of these yourself. Please check out my earlier podcasts about the temperaments. There's episode 81, 89, 93, 99, and 102. To discover your type and the 4 temperaments for yourself, or book a typing session with me and let's find out who you are. Let's talk about the introverts first. My son Jack and future son-in-law Sam are ISTJs. Now, ISTJs prefer introversion, that's energy from time alone. They're sensing, so they like the details and the here and now. They use their thinking logic first, and they enjoy critiquing and questioning, and they usually love structure and are very organised. Now, these preferences are how they look at the world. However, Jack and Sam actually have slightly different temperaments. Temperaments describe our behaviours. Jack is a phlegmatic, laid back, and a melancholic, organised. Now, I know that sounds like a really strange mix. Sam is melancholic, he's organised, and he's a choleric. He likes to make quick decisions and get things moving. So this makes their behaviours quite different. Have a think about your behaviours and how different they are to other people around you. My husband Paul is an ISTP, only slightly different to Jack and Sam. He's more flexible about what decisions are being made and he can go with the flow, but his choleric temperament makes him impatient and he can make quick decisions and want to get things done immediately. Do any of these descriptions sound like you or anyone else you know? Do you get impatient when things feel too slow, or are you happy to wait? Jack's partner, Christina, is an INFJ. Her middle letters are different from the others I've just described in that they talk about her big picture intuition and her feeling preference. She loves to try new experiences, particularly those in the arts, and embraces differences in people and in her life. Her feeling preference means that she's an empathetic decision maker. She also has a choleric temperament that involves quick decision-making and a desire to get things moving, and is melancholic as well, and likes some structure. Does this description appeal to you? Or do you know someone who's like this? Do you constantly love trying new experiences that don't conform with what you usually do, just for the hell of it? My daughter Cassie and I are similar, except I'm an ESFP and Cassie is an ESTP. We're extroverted and we love being in the outer world. We love the excitement of bigger cities and crowds don't bother us. We're also sensing, so we do like the details. We like to be able to see, feel, taste and be in touch with our environment, just like the men I've mentioned on our trip. We're perceiving types, so we'll go with the flow. Our decision-making is slightly different. I'm a feeling type, so I'm thinking about people's emotions. Cassie's thinking preference is she's more logical, so she's a more critiquing thinker than I am. However, we both dislike discord and try to see the best in people. We don't always get it right, but we do try. Now, what does this mean when catering for a whole group of different travellers' personalities? Let's look at type and break it into the 4 preferences and look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of each. Let's begin with introverts and extroverts, remembering that introverts are energised by time alone and extroverts by the outer world. So take a listen and see which one you might be. Now, in my controlled planning, we spent a week in New York. This was for various reasons, and it was agreed upon as a group. Now, as the song goes, if you can make it there, you can actually make it anywhere. So it was really up to New York to see how we went. We hit the ground running in New York. We wanted to see Broadway shows and to be near many of New York's iconic features, such as Central Park, Times Square, the Empire State Building. So where do you think I booked our hotel? Close, of course. In fact, just one building off Times Square on Broadway. Fantastic, Kate, you say. What great work. I was so proud. The busiest part of town you could possibly book in. And it was an amazing hotel. New, very trendy, no noise at night. What else could you ask for? Well, apparently a lot. Now, if you've been to New York before, you'll know it is a very busy city. I know, and I love it. However, in my joy of finding a hotel close to activities, I hadn't considered the impact that having to walk through the noise, lighting, filth and sirens of Times Square would have on the introverted members of the group I'm travelling with. I hadn't given much thought to how overwhelming it was for people who were introverted or just didn't like big crowds. Because Cassie and I were like, what the heck? Just a load of people? Let's not get stressed and worried about it. Christina and Jack were okay with it. Christina had been there before and was mentally prepared, but because it was close to the things that she loved to do, it outweighed any stress. And Jack, he didn't really like it, but he just goes with the flow. That's stress number 1 in a big city. The next preference is intuitive and sensing types. Stress number 2, so much to do and so many different ideas. Christina's middle letter, the I for intuition, big picture, brought a very different view of the world to the other 5 travellers with her. Here we are in the heart of New York with 5 sensing types and 1 intuitive. Here's where I became much more aware of the different ways that sensing and intuitive types approach the way they view their destination. Remembering that we can all do both, but one feels more natural for us. Sensing people really enjoy the here and now. They enjoy using their 5 senses before their bigger picture as they look to see what to do in a new city. Of course, I can't say this for every sensitive or intuitive type, but Paul, Sam, Cass, myself and Jack, on many levels, were looking for the same experiences. Sam, Cassie, Paul and I love to walk. We love to see a city and we'll spend hours walking to our destination because we're viewing and we're taking in the details as we do so. Public transport can get you swiftly there, but there's so much to see on the way. We're even happy to revisit places and do the same kind of activities, such as food tours, providing it's in a different location. Now, much of this love of walking, I have to admit, comes from our early holidays when our children were younger, and they used to call me the boot camp tyrant because I would make them walk everywhere, even then. Do your young children whinge and carry on when you walk? Don't worry about it. For a start, it's good for them, builds fitness and resilience, and hopefully as adults, they'll thank you for the boot camps and be as keen as you too. Now, things have changed, and my grown-up children love it, or so they tell me now. Does this sound like you when you go to a new city or a place where you haven't visited before? Would you rather get out and get in amongst it and see and feel everything? Now, Christina's intuitive big picture view of the world brought a very different view to us as sensing travellers. She loves the theatre, musicals, museums, art galleries, which although are not just intuitive preferences, they're not experiences that we embrace. Her desire was to take in every experience that New York had to offer. She saw many more performances than we did. Good or bad, it didn't matter. She asked us if we wanted to accompany her, but was also very happy to pursue her interest alone if no one wanted to share it with her. She encouraged Paul and I to go to different shows and experiences. Sadly, we're not avid theatre buffs, and we had warned her before we left. But we did love the shows that we went to with her. They created great memories and experiences, and we were really glad to be pushed out of our comfort zone. The only problem for Christina, our wonderfully curious and experiential intuitive, was that there just wasn't enough time in the day to do everything that she wanted. Can you relate to this? The love of creativity, whether it's in the arts or any other form. Change, excitement, different ideas and attraction to things that are a little bit more offbeat. The best part for her was that rather than walk, which is time-consuming, she could use the excellent public transport to get to all of her activities, which saved time so she could fill her cup as full of experiences as possible. Now, I had booked a trip to the Hamptons for Friday, but unfortunately, with severe thunderstorms predicted, on Wednesday night we decided that we needed to cancel it. Now, in our pre-planning, this was the one thing that Jack really wanted to do in New York, as he had experienced most of the other things. Now, as a planner and an organised person, he was extremely disappointed and frustrated because he'd missed out. And I know that he will hang on to this disappointment for a long time. As ISTJs are kind of like an elephant. They never forget. As an ESFP, I really don't care. I'm like, you've got to be kidding. It's one thing. You can go back and do it again. But for him, it was extremely important. And it is all about acknowledging people's differences. So I had to understand that it actually had a huge meaning for him. Stress number 3. J's and thinkers and P's with organising. The third stress was the judging type and the thinkers, along with the perceiving types and organisation. The differences in organising, judging and perceiving preferences were obvious when trying to plan so many activities, and very diverse for different people meant that there were clashes in timetables and that people had to adjust their timeframes and their thoughts and ideas. As you know, everyone likes to be in control, even though they won't admit it. So as we pretended not to be controlling, things didn't always go to everyone's plan. We had quite a few judging types sitting in there, and frustration around meeting up and times did occur. However, talking about it really did help. Understanding people's differences was extremely valuable and important in the way of looking at dealing with others, because no one in this world thinks like you do or always wants to do the things that you want to do. So when travelling with a party of 6, you actually have to suck it up sometimes and not get what you want, because other people are different and do want different things. Most of the time, we actually managed to do what most people wanted. On occasion, we'd split up into 2 different parties when we couldn't decide, which ultimately worked for the best. Because as you and I know, very rarely, even with only 2 people, is there total agreement. Have you ever been on a trip where you ended up arguing or fighting with your travel buddies because you saw things differently or had different expectations? Maybe one of you is an early bird while the other one liked to sleep in, or one of you is super quick at packing and the other takes forever. There are so many things to think about when planning a trip together. Take Paul, for instance. 35 years ago, after a 7-month trip overseas with his best friend, he didn't speak to him on his return for 20 years. Just shows how challenging it can be to agree and get along, even with someone you're close to. So my takeaway from New York, before I get on to the rest of our trip in another podcast, is that it was really eye-opening. Before we even packed our bags, it was clear that we all had different ideas and expectations. We're 6 very distinct personalities, each wanting different things from our holiday. No matter how much we know and understand each other, there'll always be different opinions and views along the way. It's just part of life. But if we see them for what they are, they're just differences, and move on with maturity and respect, we can turn that diversity into something positive. Yes, there will be some inevitable clashes, but what really stood out to me was how crucial immediate and in-depth communication was. No vacation is worth souring with tension or arguments. Whether it's venting frustrations or just chatting through with each other or someone else, made all the difference. We came away from New York with a greater knowledge of each other and a respect for our differences. Last travel tip from me today. If you tend to see the glass as half empty, here's a little piece of advice. Just because one thing goes wrong on your trip doesn't mean the whole thing is doomed. It's just one moment in time. The next minute, the next hour, something totally different could happen that turns your whole day around. So hang in there. Stay open to the good stuff that might be just around the corner. And have a great holiday. Thank you for listening to Parenting and Personalities. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you could leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies, and we'll see you next time.